Just maybe I might use it on my crampons, which are a much bigger tool, or much more steel has to be displaced, but I'd still be really careful about overheating the metal, because we all know that just destroys the temper out of the things. There we go. Get this all braced up here. See that? And I take my little triangular file and so that went from being, you know, a relatively dull screw. Oh, see, I can feel the difference how that's cutting already. Okay, and I even go so far as to make sure that the first 3 or 4 threads from the tip are don't have any burrs or smooth. I don't have any evidence of this, but I believe that it just sort of helps with the cutting power of the ice screw and facilitates in the placing of the ice screw. Sort of sets the movement for the rest of the threads, lets them get in there a little easier. And I don't do the whole thing, but the first 3 or 4, I make sure there's no burrs on my front few threads. And that screw's ready to go. Of course, you know, you have screws of various lengths for various things, and I'm not really going to talk too much about that because we all know that already, don't we? I see it's common for people to use these little, whatever, ice condoms, screw condoms, as they call them. And these are great if you're not putting your ice screws in a separate bag or something like that. That way, that'll keep them from ripping open your pack or cutting the nylon in your pack and other stuff that's in there. But essentially what I do, and what just about everybody I know around here anyhow does, is you keep your ice screws in a bag. This keeps them from banging around with others. The condoms, they're a good idea, but they're kind of a pain in the ass. You got to put them on and off all the time. If you're anally retentive, then yeah, go ahead and do that. Then I just keep all my ice screws in a separate bag, and that way they're not cutting up everything. I know what's in there. You know, and that's pretty much about all there is to sharpening an ice screw, right? So, number 1, maintain that bevel. Don't get carried away. Like, don't over grind these things. They got to last you a while, right? What's an ice screw? Anywhere from 50 to 65 bucks. Got a dozen good screws here, so that's whatever, $1,000 worth of ice screws. Can you believe that? Or close to $1,000. You know, $600–700 worth of ice screws. So. Retain the shape. You can feel it as you get more experienced. You'll start to feel, and it's like, all right. Another thing I'd like to point out to you is that the 80% of the holding power of an ice screw is in the first 4 diameters of an ice screw. Right. So what I mean by that is, okay, this ice screw is, let's say, a centimeter wide. For simplicity. Well, then 4 centimeters down, add 4 centimeters to that, and that would be 80% of the holding power of the ice screw. And that is why we have to make sure that the surface ice, when you place an ice screw, is solid. It doesn't have air in it. You're not drilling through a plate or a separation of a plate of ice. And remember, quite often what happens is the outside layer of ice will be closer to the ambient air temperature, whereas the core further into the ice will be a different temperature altogether. And wherever that drastic change in the ice happens, you know, somewhere, say, you know, in a bunch of centimeters, and then it starts to warm up in here, is quite often where you'll see those plates breaking off. You know, when you hit it and then things shatters. Well, that's where that happens. And so if you break off, or you shear off the outer ice, then you're guaranteed, or not, you're more certain that the surface ice is very good, because whatever, you don't want to create a fulcrum, which greatly reduces your ice screw. And so if we were to use that theory, I mean, there's your first 4 diameters, good ice screws. So in theory, this ice screw is no more safer than this ice screw, even though their lengths are quite a bit different. But then again, in theory, communism works, right? So, but it's not always so. That is just about it. The reason I know that about the 4 diameters of ice screws is that, 15 years ago or so, I had these engineers that were designing buildings up in the Arctic, and they had to do some column testing in the permafrost, and what would they build these cement columns, and then they'd pull the columns over with a cat. And after talking to these guys, there was one year, and then a couple years later, another engineer from the same firm came on another ice course, and we chatted about this whole thing again. And they said, yeah, their multi-million-dollar research projects were directly related to ice screws. And I sort of took them at face value, and I've been teaching that ever since. Like this, look at this screw. I can't even, right? Hardly bites at all, and yet, give me a couple of minutes, and this puppy will be sharp enough to shave with. But you don't need to shave with this, because in reality, what you want to shave with is your Philips electric razor. Now, this is the finest razor in the world. Philips electric razor. Yes, sir. You might be ice climbing and sitting in the mountains, but when you come down from the hills, nothing like a quick shave to get you by. Remember, your Philips electric razor. Thank you.